Well, hello, everybody. Today we are talking about your prenatal star point. Arielle is going to explain how to find your natal Venus star point, your prenatal Venus star point, and I'm just going to interject my thoughts on it and ask some questions. So, Arielle, thanks for doing this. This is going to go on your channel so that just to help people just to understand the basics of the Venus star, which is such powerful work. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I know you're teaching a Venus class. Louise is one of the teachers who've been through the certification of the Venus Star Point program, and she's been teaching a Venus retrograde class during this past Venus retrograde, which I hear was great and was pretty full. And so if you want to get on her mailing list for the next Venus retrograde class, check it out because I'm sure you will not be disappointed.
Yeah.
So here we go. I'm going to share my screen and give you a tour of how to find your Venus star point. Okay. One of the reasons we thought it was important for doing this, Louise and I have been discussing this, and some of our other Venus star people too, is that there's a lot of people in the world right now teaching the Venus star point, and a lot of people getting readings from astrologers who are doing the Venus star point. And I've gotten a few emails recently from people that were a little confused as to how you actually do it, what dates you use to look up your 5 Venus star points, and where you start, and what the sequence is. And so in some cases, people were doing it not exactly the way I taught it. That doesn't really mean it's wrong. It just means that if you want to follow the way that I'm presenting it, I'll show you how that is, and you can choose to, follow this method, which is what I based most of my research on and what I find works pretty well. So first of all, it's probably understood by now, if you're watching this video, that Venus and the Earth together orbit in a 5-star pattern around the sun and a pentagram. And I like the fact that I was fascinated by this figure of Leonardo da Vinci that he used, the Vitruvian Man. Around the same time, I was starting to work with the star, and I was putting the 5-pointed star of Venus against the backdrop of the zodiac. And so, for instance, this graphic you see on the right is somebody that would have been born at the very beginning of the Scorpio star point back in 1926 when it began. It usually runs 100 years through a sign, and so 2026 will be the very last of the Venus star points in Scorpio. And as you can see, at the time that it began, it had 2 arms, an Aquarius arm and a Virgo arm, and it had 2 feet, an Aries foot and a Cancer foot. Well, the only thing that's the same now at the end of the Scorpio period is Aries. Aries is at the end of the period also. And so I've also termed this relationship life mates. Scorpio and Aries on the Venus star are life mates because they enter together and they will leave together approximately the same time. But the other arms and legs have changed over the course of Scorpio's 100-year journey, Venus's 100-year journey through Scorpio. That's something we can deal with later, but right now, I just want to introduce you to the fact that what I call it is the head, that your main point, your prenatal Venus star point is called the head. It's the head-heart conjunction, actually, the head-heart connection, but simply we can call it the head. And then you've got the 2 arms and you've got the 2 legs. And so in this fashion of the Vitruvian man, we are the human being emanating the star coming through us, the 5 points of the star. One is at the crown of the head, going down through to the heart chakra, down the central spine. The two are at the hands and the two are at the feet. And by the way, all 5 of these points in energy medicine are places on the human body that receive and send a great deal of energy. The crown chakra, the palms of the hands, and the soles of the feet are very sensitive points for transmission and reception. So I think that these 5 Venus star points that we have, that we can superimpose over our own body, is also a very, important thing for our own life and for our own well-being.
And, just to kind of point out, just energetically, Venus has been described as Earth's big sister. So, and in esoteric astrology, it's said to be the higher energy of Earth and things like that. So to tune into this Venus energy is really powerful, energetically. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Astrology has always had an axiom that's been associated with it ever since I can remember learning it, called as above, so below, which is really from Hermes Trismegistus and the Emerald Tablet. But as above, so below means that which is in heaven happens on earth. And so when we superimpose these 5 zodiac signs from the celestial sphere onto the material plane, which is our human body, we are actually, it's another representation of what we call as above, so below. So this was, further to the point from the previous slide. These are the arms and the legs, and if we were using the Scorpio as the head, Scorpio star point as the head, these are the partners it's going to have throughout the course of its life. And depending on when you were born in that 100-year period, if you happen to be a Scorpio star point, if you were born early in the period, you're going to have a Virgo Aquarius set of hands. And if you were born later in the Scorpio period, from the 1980s on, you will have a Capricorn Leo set of hands. If you were born before 1964, you will have a Cancer foot. If you were born after 1964, you will have a Gemini foot. So really, each sign has its own unique relationships or star partners, star mates, I call them. And this is a fixed thing for Venus. They don't really change. They change when they change in terms of, when it's time to change signs. But what I'm saying is they are fixed in a certain relationship with these signs. And according to Venus, this is the the cosmos according to Venus, or from the Venus point of view, the Venus star point of view. Earth Venus really is what we should be saying, because when we're saying Venus star, what we're really saying is not Venus alone in your chart. We're seeing it as the combination of Earth Venus or Sun Venus, because they were all 3 lined up together at the cazimi to make that star point. Now, this is the table that I have in my on my website. I have it in my book. It's downloadable from the website. You can put it on your phone or carry it with you. And I know many people that do. I do. It's an easy table to see, the dates. And what you're going to see is you're going to see all these dates, but typically you're going to be born between two of these dates. You're probably not going to be born exactly on one of these dates because these dates are separated by 9.5 months. Because the Venus star only comes, there's only a Venus star cazimi every 9.5 months. And so somewhere you're going to be born between the two. And the question is, do you go to the next one to get your star point, the next date, or do you go to the one before, or do you go to the closest one? Which means, do you measure out the number of days to the next one or the one before? And that's all very confusing. So the simple way, and the way that I do it, is I always go back to the one before. And if you're familiar with working with astrology, you're probably familiar with the idea of prenatal eclipses. And it's the same kind of principle. A prenatal eclipse point is going to resonate through your life. A prenatal eclipse point is a very powerful degree that brings people, places, and events into your life that are part of your soul's history, part of a very important connection to your soul. Well, similarly, this Venus star point and the prenatal star point has woven the energy of love, the energy of the heart, the cosmic heartbeat of the universe, Venus, into our being in a prenatal condition. We were in the womb. It might have been 2 weeks before we were born that it occurred. It might have been 2 months. It might have been 7 months. But at some point before we were born, we had this cazimi, this heart center starting to activate in our pre-birth life. So that's why I use that. And there's only one exception I make to go to the next one, and we'll show an example of that later. But not that many people need to go to the next one. It's usually the ones before that are going to describe it. So let's go to our next slide. So to get a better look at that table, you're probably going to see that, and I don't know why that got so weird. The formatting got weird on the slides here for some reason, but what you're going to see is you're going to see a list of dates. Like this starts at 2021 and it goes down to 2038. This is our current timeline right now. And it's showing, the different star points. And you'll notice that under the Venus column, there's a D. The next one says R. The next one says D. The next one says R. The next one says D, R, D, R. That's never going to change. They're always going to be an alternating D, R. D means Venus was direct during the cazimi. R means it was retrograde. D means that you were born when Venus was at her superior conjunction with the sun, and you came out as an evening star. R means you were born following the interior conjunction of the sun, and that you were born as a morning star. So evening, morning. D equals evening, R equals morning. And that's important too in the interpretation of your star point. There's so much literature. I have a table in my book about the differences between the morning star and the evening star. And that table alone could be a whole class of information about, how the ancients saw it and what the differences are and all of that.
And
but anyway, this is what you're going to see.
Can I say different cultures as well? They all kind of there's a lot of cultures, isn't there, that looked at the difference between morning and evening star. And you have one of each here.
Just about every culture looked at the difference. And most of them were pretty sure it was the same planet. Some of them maybe weren't clear, but they did have different names for them. But it's funny because we have a term that's called morning star, and we have a term that's called evening star. But did you ever wonder what that term came from? it actually has been used in history to describe Venus, her two roles. And don't forget that Venus governs two signs in astrology. She's said to govern Taurus and Libra, and those are two signs fitting her morning star designation and her evening star designation. But then again, that's beyond the scope of this video. We may touch into that in another one in the future. But right now, I just want to show you this, what you're going to see when you look at that table. You're going to look at dates spaced about 9 months apart. January 8th, 2022 was our previous retrograde in Capricorn, 18. And then our current one is now, which this should be lined up here, August 13th, 20 Leo retrograde. And then the next retrograde will be March of 25 at 2 Aries. And so those are the retrogrades, but in between the retrogrades, there's always a direct one that comes about halfway in the cycle. So from retrograde to retrograde, it's Venus's full 584 days, her synodic cycle, but halfway between, she does another Cosmology, like a checkpoint. Some people call it like a new moon, full moon, or new moon Venus, new Venus, full Venus. And there's some debate right now in the astrological community about where Venus actually starts the cycle. Is it at the interior conjunction, or is it the exterior conjunction? Do you have any thoughts about that yourself, Louise?
I tend to use the interior conjunction or the inferior conjunction, but I can see arguments for both. And because it's all cyclical, I think each one is beginning and ending something. So I don't really.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I think it's.
Why don't we ask Venus what she thinks?
Yeah, and Venus literally came to me in a dream and said, "You're doing a Venus retrograde class in early."
Yeah.
And I see that.
Well,
I see that. Yeah, I see
that happens. Venus literally came to me and said, "You're going to write this book."
And I see the retrograde conjunction as, because Venus is closest to Earth at that point, as kind of our rebirth. And then when she's out on the other side of the sun, she's out in space having her own kind of rebirth. So
right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important one, because she appears after the morning star. She appears as a morning star after the interior conjunction when she's retrograde, pretty immediately after the Cosmology. 6 to 8 days. This year I think it was 10 days that it happened on August 13th, and the first actual visible sign that anybody posted a picture in the northern hemisphere of Venus was around August 23rd. So it took about 10 days this time, but I've seen it take as little as 7 or 8 days. When she appears as an evening star after the exterior conjunction, it can take up to 60 days for her to come out, sometimes 40, 50. It depends on what sign it's coming through, and the declination or latitude or whatever, all this astronomy kinds of stuff that we don't want to get into here. And but it takes her a lot longer. But the main point here is that, why is she hidden from us so much longer before she comes out as evening star? Like, what's going on with her and the sun behind the scenes is what I always think. She wants her privacy. She wants to be left alone. She's not visible. She's not, she's not working. She's got her sign up saying out of office, automatic response, out of office, catch you later.
By the way, I had to wait till August the 29th to see her as morning star because of mountains in the way. So always know that where you are will depend on when when you actually see Venus rise as morning star or evening star as well, and
Right.
what's in the way of your horizon as well. Yeah.
So it's not something that I've actually talked about so much in the book, but it's another element to put into your workings of the Venus star. Is it's not only looking back at the last Cazimi of before you were born, but if you do look to see how close you were born to that Cazimi, if you were born as an evening star and you were only born 2 weeks after the Cazimi, your Venus isn't showing yet for many, many days, which translates into many, many years in your life before it comes out to become visible. And so it's sometimes worth looking at to see where are you in that cycle, to see how far how long it's going to take for Venus to become visible, and when does she reach her maximum elongation and brightness, and when does she start heading, to the next cycle again? Because if you were born 2 weeks before the next cycle, you are ending, let's say, your morning star kind of life phase as a morning star, and you're getting ready to go into being reborn as a phase of evening star. And that's going to be a big change in your life too. That can be told when we read a Venus star chart for somebody. We can tell them when they're having those kind of changes, if they are having those kind of changes. Not everybody does. So this is the glyph I designed for the Venus star, the darkened Venus and the star, because when it's Cazimi, you can't see Venus. So it is a dark Venus, basically, and the star. But when you put it in your chart, just put it in. Let's say it's 18 Capricorn. Just put it in your chart where it falls and read it as you would any other very important planet, and think of it as a Sun-Venus conjunction in your chart. Think of it as a Sun-Venus conjunction. Think of it as a very bright light of the sun with Venus wrapped inside of it, with her heart beating very strongly. So it's going to give you a certain kind of passion and energy. It's going to make your heart beat faster. It's going to bring you joy. It might be a talent that you were born with that you don't even realize you have, because it's just there inside of you, and you can do it, and you don't really know why, but it's there. And then you can start interpreting it as you would anything else, by sign, by house, by aspect, by degree, morning star, evening star, etc. And there's a lot you can take just from that one Venus star point. You don't even have to go to all 5 at once and try to look at them all, which people do. But if we start with the one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
personally, having taken the certification and been working with the natal star point for a while, I think it's actually really important to stick with the one at first and get to understand it and know it, because it brings out, or you discover something in yourself that is really important to start embodying in your life. Honestly, it's been quite life-changing for me, discovering my own natal Venus star point, and really kind of meditating, if you like, on how it works in my chart, and just focusing on that one point. Everybody wants to see everything at first, but really stick to that one first.
Yeah. Well, we start with the basics, just like we do in astrology. There's beginner astrologers that want to start with, all kinds of things, like your Pluto and your Chiron and your, this and intricate aspect patterns, but they haven't even told you about your sun and your moon, which are so essential to the person that we're reading for, or the ascendant. So this is kind of the same principle. Let's start with the basics and then build on that,
And
I
on,
want to hear about yours when we get to that.
yes, yeah. So just to say, while Ariel's sorting the slides, that most astrological software yet does not add the Venus star point. So you'll probably have to, add it on a PDF manually or a JPEG, or print it off and mark it on. Astro Gold lets you add a fixed point, but it doesn't say what that fixed point is. So with Ariel's been trying to, I think there's one, isn't there? Sirius, is it?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to David Cochran from Sirius Software, because he did program it in all 5 star points. And
Yeah.
so you can find it there. And he gives a little description of the head, the arms, and the feet. And how, for the person born at that particular time. So that's a good one. And then there's another one called Planet Dance that also draws your 5 star points. So it is out there. It is available. Okay, our test subject right now is going to use a person, but I thought, well, let's just use now.
Yeah.
Let's just use, and we're recording this in early September of 2023, just past the Kazemi of August 13th, 2023, when it was 20 degrees Leo. So our little baby, and actually I do have somebody who's expecting a grandchild any day now. So this will be her little baby's star point set. Her head point, it's September 1st, right? So what's the date? What's the star point previous to our birth date? Well, it's August 13th, and it just happened a few weeks ago. So her head star is going to be at 20 Leo, and it's a morning star because it was retrograde, and that's going to be her main natal star point. So when we say, what's your star point? She would say, I'm a Leo star point, morning star. That's all you need to say. You don't even need the degrees. That's more technical. That comes in later. That's part of the interpretation. But right now, the simple basic thing is, and she is, her due date is any time now. It could be a Virgo baby, but it also might be a Libra baby. We don't know yet. But then we would say Virgo sun, Leo star point. And that's like a shorthand. That's something you can get from not even having to do the whole chart. Because from the day a person's born what sun sign they are, and from looking at this table what Venus star point they're born. So you can say, okay, this is going to be a Virgo Leo combination, and then proceed to tell her, this, expectant grandmother wants to know, well, what's the little baby going to be like? I can tell you right away. I don't know all the details, but I can tell you this much, Virgo Leo. Then, we look, that's the star point. Now we go to the one just previous to that. The one that came before Leo was Libra, 29 Libra back here. And it came before because the date is prior. It's October 2022. So that's the arm. And the date that occurred before that for the Kazemi was 18 Capricorn. So that's the foot. Because it's always a clockwise speed, you could actually start at this foot and say number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because this is how Venus Kazemis travel around the outside of the circle. This is how they do. This is how Venus does her thing. And then the arm on the other side hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen next June, 2024. It'll be at 14 Gemini. And then the one after that will be in March of 2025 at 2 degrees Aries. So these are the 5 star points. Now you can do 1,000 things with these 5 star points, once you know them. And people already start getting associations. Oh, 14 Gemini. That's my
that's 2 degrees.
that's my Mercury. you know.
At 2 degrees from my moon. So yeah.
Okay, there you go. And so you're going to go, oh, what does that mean? You know, okay. Um, well, when you get to 2024 and you get to that Kazemi, you'll probably know exactly what that means. But all five of these points are already resonant now. I mean, they're already vibrating because Venus is already anticipating, just like Zero Aquarius is already vibrating because it knows Pluto's going to be there. It's already been there. It's not there now, but it's going to be there again. And you know, it's like it's already a sort of a sensitive vibrating point. So these 5 points, and I would say for a whole 8-year period, really, because Venus works in this 8-year pentagram and just moves very, very slightly. Because when you see the next 5 star points, you'll see that it's moved very, very little. The next Capricorn star will be at 16 Capricorn, and the next Libra star will be at 30 Libra, which is also 0 Scorpio. The next Leo one will be at like 19, and the last Gemini one was at 13 Gemini, and this one's 14, and so on and so forth. We'll have 2 Aries, and it'll go down to 1 or 0 Aries, back to 1, 0 again. So we've got, you know, we've got sometimes Venus going like the nodes, mostly backwards through the zodiac. But sometimes if you're using true node, it's going to go forward and back. It's going to go forward and back a little bit. So this is really the slide that shows the exact sequence of how I would use it, you know, based on the date, the subject's date of September 1st, 2023. You're going to use these 5 dates, which means the star point right before the person's birth, the 2 before that, and then the 2 after that. Does that make sense to you, Louise?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just to point out though, just on your slides, that the retrograde slide points, look to the column on the right, because I don't know why that middle one's got them all direct. So look to that column on the right. On
Which one on the right?
On your list of the dates, you've got the degrees and the RDR on the right hand column, and the middle one you've got all D's. I'm not sure what happened there. So.
Yeah, because the middle one is the sun.
Oh, right, okay.
Which never goes retrograde.
Yeah, of course, but
and the second column,
I don't know,
because this is a full table. The headings, I didn't put the headings in.
Yeah,
should say sun, and then it should say Venus.
That makes sense.
But yeah, so the sun is always D. It never goes retrograde, but Venus does, and so that's why you see the RD, RD, RD. And you should always see that. You should always see them alternating. You'll never see 2 Ds in a row or 2 Rs in a row. Just doesn't happen. At least not until Earth and Venus and our whole solar system do a backflip and
which could
wind up somewhere else. But that's not part of this conversation. Okay, what else have I got here? That's Tina Turner's. I've shown this slide before in presentations. This is her 5 points with her everything in it, her planets and her own planets and her 5 star points and all of that. We're not going to get into interpreting that now.
But she was a Virgo, right? Just
she was a Virgo star point now.
Like
and that's another thing I will tell you, that her star point is 12 Virgo. In her lifetime, the Virgo star point phased out and it became Leo. And so it became Leo in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
So the birth of the Leo star was 1987. She was born in 1939. So she was almost 50 years old. When 48 years old, 47, somewhere in there. when that star point changed. But she had grown into a real regal queen of performance artists by the time the Leo star came. Whereas in the Virgo period, she was working, first for the Ike and Tina Turner Review and part of that. And she was like in service to that and in service to Ike, and really didn't have her own say about anything. What she sang, what she wore,
Yeah.
when she sang, how many performance dates there were going to be, what the money was going to be. She had no control over any of that. But as it was slowly changing into Leo at some point later in her life, because that's still a continuation of her star point, she now has access to all of that. She's calling the shots. She's saying when I sing, how I sing, what I wear, what I do. It's like she became the sovereign at
Well,
that point.
I could tell you, as a fellow Virgo star point, my life began to change in many ways after 1987. So yeah.
Yeah.
Not gonna go
And in similar ways, can you relate to that too? In
very
similar
similar.
ways?
Yeah, but until then, I thought you just worked a job, and you just went to work, and your pittance every day. I was born very working class. And after 1987, that's when I started studying astrology, learned all these things, and learned that actually I could follow what I really wanted to do, my heart's desire, rather than just doing what society told me I should do.
Well, you were doing exactly what the star point was saying to the whole culture, really, because I saw an enormous change. Looking back now, I wasn't aware of it at the time. I didn't even know about star points at the time, but I did know that after a certain point in the late 80s, going into the 90s, people were not looking for 9 to 5 jobs anymore. They did not want to be part of the regular job workforce. They wanted to be independent. They wanted to be more entrepreneurial. They wanted to
Yeah.
use their own creativity. And so many people working jobs who were very highly skilled, very intelligent, very talented, were not being allowed to use those talents and skills in a way that reflected who they were, because in the Virgo sphere, it was the company or the boss, that told you what your job requirements were, and that's the extent of it. But I think when we gave birth to the Leo star, I also saw it as the bursting forth of youth, very young children. All these talent shows came on TV, American Idol and Britain's Got Talent and America's Got Talent and The Voice, and all these shows came in where, 5-year-olds were singing opera on the stage, not just, one in a million people, but it seemed like there were tons of them being born, these little Leo star point babies that were like just full of talent and, energy. So that was another thing that happened.
Yeah.
What else have I got here? This is the one I wanted to show. This is, as I was saying before, if you start, your actual star point in terms of the sequencing comes at number 3, because you're looking at the 2 dates before that one. For the foot, number 1, then comes the arm, number 2, then comes your star point, number 3, then comes number 4, then comes number 5. So the other thing that's cool, I think, about looking at Venus star points is all you need is the date. You don't need a time or place. So when people say, well, I don't know when I was born exactly, and nobody has a record of it, you can still do a pretty decent Venus star point reading for them. You just won't have an exact wheel with an ascendant and houses and all that, but you can still do a pretty exact reading for them. Now, these arrows are important because this is the direction of the Venus star flow. it always goes clockwise, which is against the zodiac and the planets. And I called it the feeding principle. It could also be thought of as a precession principle, because this is what Venus actually does. This is the Cazimi, this is the path of the Cazimis, you know. She's always going to be here, you know, like she'll always be at Gemini, which then goes into Aries, which then will go into Capricorn, which then will go into Libra, which then will go into Leo, and then back to Gemini. You know, it's not going to change. That's the sequence.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing to know. And it's also important when we start looking at relationship patterns with people, because what happens then is that your partner will be on this arm or this leg, and you want to look at the flow. Okay, so your partner is on spot number 1 and you're at number 3. And so the flow actually goes to you from your partner. Whereas if your partner was over here at number 4, the flow goes from you to your partner. So on this side, you're receiving. This is what we call, you know, receiving from 1 and 2, but you're giving to 4 and 5. That's also terminology that's been a little confused out there by different people teaching it. A giving hand and a receiving hand, what does that mean? It really means it's nothing too esoteric. It's just really where Venus has been before. You know, she's giving you because she's been there before and she knows where she's just been. You know, she hasn't been to number 4 yet in your incarnational sequence. So you're giving to it because you're looking to the future. Where am I going? This is what I want to, you know, contribute to. You're usually not going back to your past. You're not looking back to your past. You might be looking back, but if you're spending most of your life looking back to your past, you're not moving forward with the Venus flow. You know, you can look at your past and learn from it and receive from it important information that helps you navigate the now and also helps you get to where you want to be in the future. Makes sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. And then there was none.
Oh. So you were going to quickly, one question I get asked a lot when I tell people how to find their prenatal star point is, what if I'm born really close to a star point, to the next one? And we have a general rule of about a week before. That's your what you say in the book, isn't it? And I think you have an example of that. So
yeah, and the example is basically yeah. Okay, I've got to get this chart up. How do I get this chart up on the screen? Okay, I'm just going to put it here, and then I'm going to share my screen. And share. Here it is. This is the chart of Winston Churchill, and I've actually used him as an example in my book because I thought it was a pretty stunning example. He was born November 30th, 1874, which, by the way, was a Venus transit, which are very rare. They only happen in pairs in an 8-year span of pairs. And the last set happened in 1874 and 1882, right when he was born at Venus transit. And then we had the next pair in 2004 and 2012. And then the next one won't happen until 2120 or something. So they are rare. And he was also born very close to the Cazimi, but not quite yet. Notice his Venus is at 22 Sag, and it's retrograde. And the sun's at 7 Sag, of course, always direct. So sun and Venus are moving towards each other, right?
Mhm.
So when he was born, he technically wasn't born at the Sagittarius Cazimi. If you look at the Cazimi before his birth, he was born at the Pisces Cazimi, which happened a full 9 months before he was born, probably right around his conception back here in Pisces. So it was only about 8 days or so after he was born that this next Cazimi occurred. But it's not counting the number of days that makes that the judgment occurs for this as to whether we should consider him a Sagittarius Venus star point, which I think fits pretty well for him because he was a statesman and he was a general and he was a well, anyway, a lot of Sagittarius attributes as well. If you read his history, you'll know what I mean. And then also Sag becomes, Jupiter becomes really important in his chart, and Jupiter's conjunct Mars and a south node. So he did have a mission to fulfill, and a lot of it had to do with military and statesmanship as well. So all of that's there. Moon at 29 Leo on Regulus, so basically, but the criteria for making him a Sagittarius star point, which I have, is that both the Sun and Venus were already in Sag, which is the sign of the Cazimi. And I've seen it happen, like I also have another chart. His happened pretty soon after he was born, but both the key components of the Cazimi are Sun and Venus, and they're already both in Sagittarius. So this is why it's important to think of him. And then I call this the triple crown. When you're born on or near the Cazimi and you've got the Venus star point, Venus and the Sun, all in the same sign, it's the triple crown of Venus because they're all there.
Yeah, so it was
now one more chart I'll show you.
It was December the 8th that they met at 17.
Yeah, okay, December 8th, so 9 days after his birthday. Yeah. Now let's look at Dolly Parton. She's actually an Aries star point, technically, but look at how close her Venus and her Sun are, 26 Capricorn, 29 Capricorn. Well, she was born in an era where the Capricorn star wasn't going to happen for another 40 years. So in her birth, it would have been the Aquarius star would have been next, the Aquarius star. But because Venus is not in Aquarius, nor is the Sun in Aquarius, neither one of them are in Aquarius, even though they're conjunct, I didn't designate her as an Aquarius star point. But at some point in her life, she progressed. And if you look at your date, you'll see, well, when was that Aquarius Cazimi in 1946?
That was February the 1st, 1946.
February 1st. Okay, so January 19th to February 1st is about what?
13 days.
13 days. So it's not the number of days because Churchill was 9 days, right, and she's 13. That's pretty close, really. It's really because you couldn't really call her a triple crown Aquarius because nothing's in Aquarius yet. But in her life, they're all going to flip over to Aquarius very, very shortly. She was what, age 13 when she got the triple crown, the Sun, Venus, Cazimi, and Aquarius. And look at her part of fortune's 13 Aquarius. I mean, it happened right on her part of fortune. And what's interesting is if you read her biography, which is also trine Uranus at 13, by the way, Gemini up here, and her midheaven at 12 Gemini, almost 13. And if you read her biography, you'll find out that she had some really important things going on around that age that made her who she is today.
See, I learn
So,
you every day from Arielle too. So
sorry.
see, I learn something new from you every day as well. So I had taken the days. You know, this is why we need to really kind of, you know, learn more about it from Arielle's book and from Arielle herself, because I had not.
Well, yeah, and that's why I think we'll do a few more tutorials here, videos for YouTube, because I would like people to, the way that I teach it, the way that I came to understand it, the way that I've been working with it, that really has what the components that have gone into building my system of, you know, the Venus star and the Venus star point system of astrology. This is what I base it on. Now everybody's going to have their own take on it. Some people might look at this chart and go, no, she's, you know, she's this or she's that, or oh, look, she was born at the Capricorn Cazimi, 26 and 29. But like I said, we wouldn't have a Capricorn Cazimi until 1986. So the very first one. And that would be another year to look at her biography, to look at, well, what was Dolly doing in 1986? Because the Cazimi in Capricorn, the birth of the Capricorn star happened in January of 86 at 29 Capricorn, right on her sun. So it's, you know, it's going to be really something to think about, you know.
Yeah, definitely. But that makes so much sense to anybody who watches this, who has heard me talking about the VSP, to take into account what sign both Venus and the sun were in, as well as the Venus star point, before you say, oh, it was born within a week, and so therefore it's the next VSP, because
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can do averages if you want, but if you're actually working with real astrology, you're not doing averages. You're looking at the precise position of the planets when you were born. You're not just rounding it up and going, well, you know, you might have been born when the moon was here or the moon was there. No, the moon was actually here.
Exactly. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's really it for this. I mean, I think those are the most important points we wanted to get across today, right? Was how to find the main star point and the other subsequent 4-star points of your chart. And then what happens, you know, when do you designate going before or after? It's almost always 90% of the time you're going to be going to the previous star point. It's only these very rare cases like this that you're going to go up to the very next.
So incidentally, I think there's only something like about 1.5% of people born with Venus retrograde. So I bet it's about the same percentage for people who are born with that triple crown kind of energy.
Oh yeah. What was the percentage?
About 1.5%.
Okay. Yeah, because Venus doesn't go retrograde that often.
So I bet it's pretty rare that people are born with the sun, the moon, and the VSP all in the same sign. So yeah, and all close.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be very rare. Yeah.
The sun, Venus, sorry.
Right.
So yeah, but I think as well, when Arielle and I talked about doing this, I think we really wanted to, you know, clarify a few, you know, technical points about finding your Venus star, but also to kind of emphasize how important it really is to kind of start with your Venus star and really kind of look deeply into that first and then add the other bits.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So we're going to post this on our YouTube channel. You have a YouTube channel. I have a Venus Star Point official YouTube channel. Louise has one. Please post comments in the section. If you have questions or comments, please post. And one or both of us will try to get back to you on, some of those questions like, well, I was born here and,
Yeah.
blah,
Or,
blah, blah, whatever.
or one of the other practitioners as well could come in and answer too. So there's a
Exactly. We have a growing list of Venus Star Point practitioners, and I'd like to invite you to check out the course syllabus on the website. And if you're a practicing astrologer that's already using Venus Star Point in your work, you might want to just go a little bit further and deeper. And we're going to have a series of courses coming up that will start certifying different levels, of Venus Star Point practitioners. So thank you for having me today, or thank you for being here today, I should say. We're kind of hosting each other. I don't know.
no, it's been a pleasure. And as usual, every time I kind of go further into the work, I also, deepen my understanding of it as well. So thanks for doing that, Arielle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't you just tell the listeners one thing before we close? And that is, you had said earlier that that there was something about finding your Venus star point that was really astounding to you. And do you want to share any of that?
Yeah, well, my natal Venus star point is in Virgo, so we've talked quite a bit about the Virgo star point, and just this, well, mine's in the 8th house, conjunct Pluto, aspecting nearly everything in my chart, and it really kind of just really explained my lifelong draw to really exploring the deeper mysteries of the cosmos in very service oriented way, and going into great detail. That Virgo star point, I was like, why do I feel so Virgo? It didn't just make sense to me that I was only born in the Pluto in Virgo generation, because there's so many of us. Why was my particular focus? Because those are people that have worked with me know that I'm a shamanic practitioner as well, and I'm a trained hypnotherapist. I've done all those kind of trainings to explore the deeper realms, and I've also always been interested in reading all kinds of occult things, if you like, and exploring the hidden and finding my
So that's what the Venus star point conjunct Pluto, right?
yeah, very much
Yeah,
so, and in the 8th house.
in the 8th house. And then if you add the Virgo, I've always said to the Virgos, once your resume must be so long that
It is.
you'd need you need a whole house to stretch it out, and
Yeah.
like it's pages and pages and pages, and when you're going for a job interview, you might have to really condense it down, even though you've done all these things. It's like that's what a Virgo does. They're here to, what else can I do?
Oh yes, I've done many.
What else can I learn? What else can I get certified in? What else can I try to attempt to achieve mastery in?
Yeah, all those things. And but actually discovering what my Virgo star point was kind of helped me to kind of bring that in and stop thinking that I needed another certification as often. And so I have slowed down on that and realized that I can actually use, which is a very good Virgo word as well, all the things I've already done and studied, and bring them all together to teach others. So there you go.
Yeah. Synthesis. I like to say Virgo is synthesizing,
Yeah.
and you've got all these things that you can do. Now, how do I put them together in my unique little package?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was kind of pretty life-changing in a way to discover it, because now I have focused more on synthesizing and teaching it, and or serving others, or whatever you want to call it as well too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, I'd have to agree. When I learned what mine was, I found it to be pretty affirming. And it wasn't even a mental thing that said, oh yeah, that works. It was more like I got
Oh,
a laser beam in right into my heart
yes.
that said, yeah,
The other
that's
the other interesting thing to see what's going to come, though, Ariel, for me, is that I have both Pluto and Uranus in the 8th house, and my Uranus is at 20 degrees of Leo. And so this current star point was right on my Uranus, and I'm having a Uranus square as well. So because it's my Venus star progressed back into, or transited back into Leo.
yes, right. It's your own natal one.
This is going to be really interesting how it all kind of comes out now.
Right, right. Well, did you feel a change right on the Kazemi?
Oh yeah. Yeah. But it is in my heart, like you said, it's more right from deep within. So
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's yeah, and we have some plans coming up that's gonna that's gonna factor right into that Uranus and your Venus star point, because this Venus class that you just taught, which was incredible from what I've heard. I wish I could have been part of some of it, but you're going to be repeating that, and other opportunities are going to be coming up. So watch this space, watch this channel for more little tutorials on Venus Star Point, and also how you can move ahead in your studies and practice with Venus Star Point in terms of certification.
Definitely. Yep. Yep. And we'll send out details of that as soon as we have them. So, and share them on our page. We've got a page, and on the YouTube channel. So Venus Star Point. Yeah, just look for that.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So again, thank you for this little discussion. I hope this makes sense to everybody, and we want to hear from you.
Definitely. Bye for now.
So I guess I have to do what everybody else on YouTube does, and that's say, like our video, subscribe, and what else do they say?
Yeah, I use that bit. Give a thumbs up as well.
Give a thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll see you again in some future point.